Now it's time to work on the material for the velvet cushion. Now we can find in the material settings that there is a velvet BSDF material. So our first attempt will be to try changing that to a kind of dark red value. But when we look at it in rendered view, preview option, it's not very impressive. We'll see what happens if we use the quick effect, quick fur. First off, it looks very strange because the fur has produced white hairs. The material for the fur is the default material. So the first thing to do is to go in, switch to the fur material in the material properties and change it to a similar colour to the background material. It still doesn't look very impressive, and part of this problem is because we're using the Eevee render engine. So a first attempt might be to change the render engine to cycles, which performs a more complex ray tracing for you, but it's a much slower process. And we see it does look more interesting, but there's still something to be desired. So we change the view back to a material preview, and we'll try adding some complexity. First of all, to the background, we'll try adding maybe a slight colour variation using a Voronoi texture, procedural texture, and blending that with a default background red, green, blue colour, which we'll set to the dark red that we've got now for the cushion. We can combine the two colours from the procedural texture and the solid red by using a mix RGB node, and then feed that colour into the velvet BSDF background. So you see the factor goes from 0, which is all the first one, to 1, which is all of the second one. So we'll produce a one that's biased towards the solid colour. And we switch off the sharp edges on the Voronoi texture. To see what the final effect will be, we're going to use the render, actually render the image. A shortcut for that we normally use is F12, but there's render image is the option we used here. It's still not very impressive, so we're going to try modifying the quick fur object, making the fibres much finer and adding additional children, which basically is a multiplier. The number of each fibre on the hair produces a number of child fibres when it's actually rendered. And rendering hair is a much more processor intensive process, but we can see it's For this exercise, it's working fine. So we can change the resolution that we're rendering so we can quickly render a sample. We'll see in the next chapter that it's possible to just render a small section for checking how things are going.